Oral questions. Questions orales. The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
The Prime Minister ran on elbows up, promising dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S. and promising this would generate $20 billion in revenue. It turns out it was actually elbows down, and the Prime Minister broke his promise and secretly cancelled those tariffs. Now Trump is threatening 50% tariffs on Canadian steel, which will devastate Canada's steel industry and put thousands of steel workers out of their jobs. Can the Prime Minister look steel workers in the eye, tell them it wasn't actually elbows down, and how much money his tariffs will actually generate?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
In this House and the Prime Minister, we will fight, Mr. Speaker, against these unjustified and illegal tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium, Mr. Speaker. We're going to protect our workers and our industry, and the Minister of Industry already spoke about that over the weekend. And we're going to build a strong Canada, Mr. Speaker. We're going to build a Canada of tomorrow, a confident Canada, a prosperous Canada, a Canada that we can all be proud of, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
It doesn't matter which Liberal stands up to answer a question in this Parliament or last Parliament. They just actually never answer a question, Mr. Speaker. And it's not complicated. Elbows up was dollar-for-dollar tariffs. Has the Prime Minister already broken his promise to steelworkers, or was elbows up simply just fake news? And now we're facing the Trump tariffs, and steelworkers from coast to coast to coast are in serious jeopardy of losing their jobs. It's a simple question. How much money from these quote-unquote elbows-up tariffs have they generated?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
There's a lot of anxiety across the country, particularly when it comes to the steel and aluminum sectors. That's why over the weekend I've been in contact with industry leaders as well as union leaders, and we will continue to make sure that we protect their jobs. In order to be in solution mode, Mr. Speaker, we will make sure that Canadian steel and aluminum is used in our major infrastructure projects. That is why steel workers have said over the weekend, at a time where our steel and aluminum sectors are being hit by massive U.S. tariffs, this is the kind of leadership we've been demanding, and it has delivered.
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
To be clear, the Prime Minister promised elbows up against U.S. tariffs. He promised dollar-for-dollar counter tariffs. He promised it would generate $20 billion in revenue, but he broke those promises. He secretly dropped counter tariffs to effectively zero. He stopped fighting back against President Trump pretty early on, and now Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%, a direct attack against our workers, their livelihoods, and the Canadian economy. So if the Prime Minister really is elbows up, if he's really fighting back, can he tell our steelworkers how many dollars have been collected in counter-tariff revenue from the U.S.? How many dollars? What's the number, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague and congratulate her for the fact that she will be now my critic. So good news, looking forward to working with her. Indeed, the comments coming out of the White House are preoccupying. That being said, no executive order has been signed yet. So we take these comments very seriously, but we are working on all scenarios. That's why the Prime Minister is in Saskatoon meeting with the premiers of the provinces and territories, and that's also why we will make sure that we execute our plan, fight, protect, and build.
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
I didn't hear a dollar amount on revenue from those counter tariffs, so we can assume it's effectively zero. And if the steel tariffs weren't bad enough, the Prime Minister is determined to keep the industrial carbon tax on our steel production, driving up the cost of steel production here at home, which perhaps is really no surprise given the Prime Minister said he claimed that Canadians don't even use that much steel, as if we don't use dishwashers and fridges and cars and pots and pans and baby strollers and housing infrastructure, all of which are made with steel, Mr. Speaker. So how can the Prime Minister claim to be elbows up for workers and fighting for affordability while keeping a punishing carbon tax on our Canadian steel producers?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
We'll take no lesson from the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. We have put in place as a country, as a nation, the largest counter tariff in our nation. ancient history, Mr. Speaker, to protect our workers in the steel industry, in the aluminum industry, in the forestry sector, in all the sectors of our economy, to defend our workers and our industry, Mr. Speaker. We should all in this room, in this House, stand proudly to defend Canadian workers, defend Canadian industry, and build Canada strong. That's Canadian, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, aluminum workers in Saguenay are very concerned. The Prime Minister promised Canadians that he would stand up to Americans and their tariffs. And now Mr. Trump is threatening to slap once again a 50% tariff on aluminum. Meanwhile, the Liberal government has reduced tariffs on American products to almost nothing. But the Prime Minister told us he would collect $2 billion. Can Saguenay workers know how much the Prime Minister has collected in counter tariffs to date? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Listen, I understand the anxiety that my colleague has expressed, and this is throughout the aluminum sector, and that's why over the weekend I went to the Aluminum Summit Sunday evening in Montreal to meet with not only industry leaders, but also to talk with the union leaders. We're going to continue to support our aluminum sector in Quebec, and we're going to use aluminum and Quebec steel and Canadian steel in our infrastructure projects. We're going to create jobs, we're going to protect these workers, and we're going to be able to defend our country against this injustice from the White House. The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, many Canadians voted for this Prime Minister thinking he would stand up to Mr. Trump. But it didn't take long for him to remove the counter tariffs on American products. Then he said he would be more fiscally responsible, but he presented spending forecasts that even outstripped those of his predecessor. He talks like a conservative, but governs like Justin Trudeau. He says one thing and then does another. When will this Prime Minister stop talking out of both sides of his mouth? The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue. I'm surprised to hear my colleagues' comments. He should be proud that our PM standing up to the President. We did not capitulate. We're standing up to defend workers in this industry. We know how important the aluminum industry is in Quebec. We know the expertise of our workers, and the best aluminum in the world is produced in Canada and Quebec, and we're going to continue to defend this industry and our workers and build a strong country together. The honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals got elected by promising that Trump's tariff threats would be their top priority. And yet, it's not the new tariff threats on aluminum and steel that are being discussed today in Saskatoon between the premiers. No, the priority being discussed is forcing Quebec to accept a dirty oil pipeline from the West. Quebecers voted for a government that would protect them from Donald Trump. They did not vote for pipelines. Are the Liberals going to get their priorities straight? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, obviously Quebecers are very concerned by the tariff war from the U.S., and that's why they elected us with 44 Quebec MPs. This is the first time since '81, and we are going to be here to defend jobs and workers in the aluminum sector because we know that these tariff threats are against this sector. So we're going to work with the member from Lac-Saint-Jean and Bécancour, etc. But fundamentally, we're going to stand up tall to protect our jobs. The honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, even before meeting with Quebec and the provinces today, the Prime Minister met with business leaders yesterday. Not representatives from the steel and aluminum industries to discuss Trump's new tariff threats. No, he met with CEOs from the fossil fuel sector. Oil companies first, Quebec and the provinces a close second. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was not elected to serve oil companies. He was elected to protect Quebec's economy from Donald Trump's threats. How come these oil companies are coming first? The Honourable Minister of Industry. I think the Bloc needs to understand that the role of the PM is to talk to everyone, whether it's in the aluminum sector or in steel or clean energy or traditional energy. That's the job of the Prime Minister. That's something that the Bloc will never understand. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, what's fundamental is right now we want to build. We're going to invest in major infrastructure projects, And one of the infrastructure projects for the Quebec that is fundamental is the high-speed train from Windsor to Quebec City, something that the Bloc should support. The honourable member for Jonquière. While the prairies are burning, the premiers are in Saskatoon talking about dirty oil pipelines and abandoning environmental assessments. That's Canadian identity today, Mr. Speaker. A Liberal Prime Minister who talks to oil companies before talking to his provincial counterparts. Provinces that isolate Quebec to force it to accept a pipeline. All these people keep telling us that it's a matter of Canadian unity and of national interest. Does the Minister of Canadian Identity also believe that Canadian unity and the national interest mean building pipelines while the prairies burn? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, you know what's the national interest? That's job creation and protecting jobs. And that's what people in all ridings where the Bloc are active in. Who's able to deliver? There's just one party, and that's the Liberal Party. And there's only one government that can protect and create jobs, and that's us. We're going to do this by working with the Quebec government, of course, and traveling with the provinces. But it's fundamental in this tariff war to fight against this White House rhetoric and to create jobs at the same time.
Honourable member for Flamborough, Glanbrook, Brant North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister promised elbows up, promising dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S. that would collect $20 billion. The Prime Minister broke that promise, giving Canadians elbows down when he dropped the tariffs on the U.S. to effectively zero. Now Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%, attacking Canadian workers, their jobs, their livelihoods, and our industry. Can the Prime Minister tell our steel workers how much has been collected from tariffs on the U.S.?
The
Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
The member on the other side is misinformed, but let's talk about the great things we've been doing for Canadians lately. Mr. Speaker, last week we introduced as the first thing in this House air tax reduction for the middle class, Mr. Speaker. 22 million Canadians will benefit from that measure, Mr. Speaker. Not only we did that, but we also make sure that we remove the GST for first-time home buyers on their first house up to $1 million, Mr. Speaker. Those are measures that makes a difference in the life of Canadians. Those are measures that makes a difference in every region of Canada. Those are measures that build a Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Flamborough, Glanbrook, Brant North.
So did you hear that, steel workers in Hamilton? Not a number in that arrogant answer. Well, I don't think that's surprising, given that this is a government whose Prime Minister believes that Canadians don't actually use steel in their daily lives. But for workers and businesses in my community of Hamilton who are looking for the support that might have come from the revenue of those counter tariffs, they're being left empty-handed, and they are worried about their future. So let me ask again, if the Liberals are truly fighting back, can they tell us how much has been collected from tariffs? How much? Just a number.
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Speaker, we know that there's a lot of anxiety across the country in the steel and aluminum sector, particularly in Hamilton. That's why I was in contact with the CEO of ArcelorMittal, Dofasco, over the weekend, talking to the head also of the Canadian steelworkers, making sure that our MPs also from Hamilton are really on board and as they're fighting for the jobs in their own communities. Mr. Speaker, this rhetoric coming out of the White House is extremely preoccupying, but meanwhile, no executive order has been signed. That's why we'll continue to fight with counter-tariffs to protect our workers and to make sure that we build national projects.
The honourable member for New-Tecumseh, Gwillimbury.
Mr. Speaker, unemployment is up 7%. Youth unemployment is 14%. Canadians can't find work, and the burden of government red tape is making things even worse. Small businesses spend 32 working days every year wrapped up in excessive regulations. It's no wonder they can't afford to hire or innovate. Will the Liberals finally cut the red tape, strangling our economy, so businesses can hire and Canadians can find a job?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, this government is focused on making sure that employers have the quality, skilled talent that they need to grow their small, medium-sized businesses and ensure that corporations across this country have the kind of innovation and talent that they are all asking for. So I would recommend that that member listen to the employers and check in with the employers in his riding who are talking about the need for more talent. We'll be there, Mr. Speaker, for every Canadian that wants to ensure they can too get a great job.
The honourable member for New Tecumseh, Gwillimbury.
It's been 10 years, and I have been listening to Canadians, and the minister should listen to Canadians who can't find a job. There are fewer new entrepreneurs than ever. Productivity and growth are down. Forget the scissors, forget the pruners, hum them. We need a chainsaw to cut through all this red tape. It's time to clear a path for Canadians to be successful and to hire. So why do the Liberals keep choking Canadian workers and businesses with their red tape?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister often says, no one can do to Canada the kind of bad things to be against the good things that Canadians can do for themselves. The Prime Minister and ministers are in Saskatoon today doing the hard work of removing red tape in the form of internal trade barriers so we can have one Canadian economy and not 13 Canadian economies. This will lower prices up to 15%, productivity up to 7%, and add $200 billion to the economy, Mr. Speaker. That's eliminating red tape. That's standing up for Canada.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised elbows up, promising dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S. and claimed he would collect $20 billion. The Prime Minister broke down that promise, giving Canadian steel and auto workers an elbow in the ribs when he dropped tariffs on the U.S. to effectively zero. Now President Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%, attacking Canadian workers, their jobs, their livelihoods, and our industry. Can the Prime Minister tell us how much he has actually collected from tariffs, and so far, how is he going to help secure jobs in Windsor?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Only we will make sure that Canadian steel and aluminum is in our major projects, but we will make sure that all the investments we're putting in defense are to create jobs, which will have an impact on the steel and aluminum sector. And that is why the United Steelworkers mentioned, at a time where our steel and aluminum sectors are being hit by massive U.S. tariffs, this is the kind of leadership we've been demanding, and that has been delivered by this government. Thank you.
The honourable member for Oxford.
The Prime Minister promised elbows up. He promised dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S., and he promised he would collect $20 billion in revenue. But in reality, he quietly dropped the tariffs on the U.S., practically to zero. And now Donald Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%. This will destroy our industry and punish our workers. Since the Canadian tax revenue was supposed to support Canadian steel workers, can the Prime Minister tell us how much has he collected so far for jobs in Oxford? And just give us just the number.
The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
Speaker, I would like to see in this House the same movement we've seen with steel workers in the industry, Mr. Speaker. This is a nation where we need to come together as a nation. This is a moment to fight together these unjustified tariffs, Mr. Speaker. This is a time to make sure we protect our industry and our worker. This is a time where we need to build this country, like the Prime Minister is doing with the premiers today in Saskatoon, Mr. Speaker. I just wish in this House that everyone would stand up to defend our industry, defend our worker, and build Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Oxford.
Surprise, surprise, they can't give us a number. And now Trump's 50% tariffs on steel will shut down our plants across our country. Thousands of jobs are on the line. Layoffs have already started in Oxford. There is anxiety on our floor shops and our kitchen tables. And it's not just Trump's tariffs that are killing jobs, it's also the Liberal industrial carbon tax. That's right. If the Prime Minister can't get a deal with Trump on tariffs, will at least give our workers a fighting chance. Remove the Liberal industrial carbon tax today.
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
we need to make sure that we fight back with strong counter tariffs against this rhetoric coming out of the White House. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? Our strategy has been working. There's only 2 countries on earth that have put counter tariffs against tariffs by the Americans, China and us. And by the way, today the U.S. Chamber of Commerce said that this threat of 50% tariffs in the steel and aluminum sector was completely unacceptable. We will work with our allies within the American society, and we will make sure that we fight back.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The elections have once again proven that Indigenous people are treated as second-class citizens federally. In Abitibi Bay James Nunavut, the Inuit were unable to vote. It has been reported that in at least 6 communities, polling station opening hours were not respected. In Avujivik, the office was never even opened. No one was able to vote there. If this had happened in Toronto, it would have been a scandal. But in the North, it's tolerated. Does the Minister to Indigenous Services think it's normal that the Inuit were denied their right to vote in this way? The Honourable Government House Leader. Elections Canada is an independent agency and, in fact, one of the best in the world. And it protects our democracy very securely and efficiently. If there are issues in terms of the election and how they were conducted, well, questions should be brought to them. The honourable member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, Elections Canada has taken away the Inuits' right to vote, the most fundamental right in a democracy. This is completely unacceptable, yet it is accepted. No one's talking about it. We cannot condone this harm caused to the Inuit by Elections Canada, whether it's through incompetence or negligence. What will the minister do to ensure that Elections Canada reveals everything that happened, and what measures will they take to ensure that this never happens again in their riding or elsewhere? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, like the member knows full well, if there are issues, these concerns can be brought, as all Canadians can do. They can bring their concerns to Elections Canada, and I'm sure that this independent agency, which is the pride of our country, will try to answer these questions. And the right to vote is obviously the most fundamental right for Canadians, and we fight for it every day here in the House. But Elections Canada is in charge of conducting our elections. They do a good job, and they will be answering these questions.
The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister introduced his first spending bill. The Liberals increased spending by 8% after promising to keep it below 2%. Spending on consultants alone increased by more than 36%. To an unprecedented $26.1 billion. Now, every Canadian household has to pay $1,400 per year in taxes just to pay for well-connected Liberal insiders. Liberal spending drives inflation. When will they spend responsibly to ensure Canadians and residents of Kitchener Centre never have to decide between filling the refrigerator or putting...
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, this new government is making sure that spending is being carefully managed and focused on our most pressing priorities. In 2023 and 24, departments started reducing spending on professional and travel services by $500 million. We will continue to review our spending to make sure that we're being efficient, effective, and focused. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, on the very day the Prime Minister pledged a 2% spending cap, his government unveiled a bill that surges spending by 8%, shattering that promise. Consultant fees skyrocketed by 36% after they promised to cut them, costing Canadian families $1,400 in additional taxes. While households are forced to manage their budgets, this Liberal government acts unchecked, putting jobs at risk. After 10 years of Liberal failures, why does the Prime Minister think it's okay to spend even more money on government insiders and lobbyists?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I just talked about our spending reduction, but also let's talk about investment in the mains. It includes important funding to support dental care, the Canadian forces, and border services. This new government is investing in Canadians to build Canada strong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, a new Prime Minister, but nothing has changed. He's proposing the same spending that will cause the same painful consequences for Canadians. People in the auto industry in Windsor, Ontario are worried about losing their homes if they are laid off. The reasons of Liberal spending are missed mortgage payments and skyrocketing losses, job losses. How is a Liberal government asking to spend $500 billion causing further inflation without a budget plan?
L'honorable ministre des Finances et du Revenu national.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to welcome my colleague to this House, but she should know that we made generational investment in Windsor, Mr. Speaker, in the auto sector. She should be celebrating the Liberal government. She should be standing up to say thanks to this government. The worker, the industry, people in Windsor can see a future, Mr. Speaker. The people of Windsor know that we have their back. They know that we're going to fight for them. We're going to fight for the industry. We're going to fight for the auto workers. We're going to build Canada strong together, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Richmond.
The honourable member for Richmond Athabasca. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Prime Minister brought in his first spending bill. After 10 years of this Liberal government, I thought it was impossible to somehow be worse than Justin Trudeau, but this is worse. The Prime Minister inherited an obese Liberal government and promised to spend less. And yet here there is 8% more in spending than what Justin Trudeau did during his last year. Without a budget, how can the Prime Minister explain this to his colleague, who's the former Minister of Finance of Quebec? How can he explain that we will be managing Canada without a budget? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation, Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is true that we received a strong mandate to make government more efficient, for example, by using new technology and by reducing dependence on external consultants. That's what we're doing and will continue to do, Mr. Speaker. We will also ensure that the public service has the expertise and tools it needs in order to accomplish its mission. But I will also mention that, for example, in the estimates, there is funding for dental care, among other things, which millions of people in the ridings of my colleagues on the other side of the House depend on. My colleagues said they would support this during the campaign, but now they say they won't, and it's really regrettable and shameful that they'll be taking away dental care for millions of people, their own constituents. The honourable member. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, let me just say that we are not going to take budget lessons from the other side of the House. Spending will increase about 3 times faster than inflation and demographic growth. That's a $500 million level without a single budget. $500 billion rather, without a budget. When my colleagues go meet families, single moms, entrepreneurs, all sorts of people who manage to make budgets and who are struggling to make ends meet, how can people like that accept this kind of spending without a budget? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'd like to thank my constituents, but it is amazing to see the Conservative selective amnesia, because just a month ago they were unable to put out a costed budget, even though they had been a costed platform, rather, even though they'd been asking for an election for years. They had plenty of time to prepare, but then they produced a platform that wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. What would my colleague tell his constituents when he's going to vote against the dental care plan, which recently was opened up to people between 18 and 64, which will open up dental care to millions of Canadians? He should be ashamed to vote against that.
The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Secretary of State for Rural Development. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I had the opportunity.
Sorry, couldn't hear the member. Would the member like to start over? I still can't hear the member. So.
of State for Rural Development. And it is indeed a very serious issue. I'd ask my Conservative friends to calm down a little bit. You know, we have very serious wildfires that are taking place in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Victims of this fire, Mr. Speaker, are having to be evacuated from rural communities in our prairies by the thousands. This is a very serious issue. I want to compliment the efforts of the firefighters and the first responders for doing a fantastic job. Can the Secretary of State explain what it is the federal government is doing?
The Secretary of State for Rural Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is a very serious matter. And I was home in Saskatchewan this weekend, and I met with the Premier. We had a very good press conference. I met with Métis Indigenous leaders. I met with local leaders, and I met with a lot of different groups, including the evacuees that are struggling with this during this very challenging time. I want to say that many of my constituents were forced to flee their homes, and certainly our prayers are sent out to them. But I'll say quickly that the federal government is ready to assist. Mr. Speaker, we'll be there for Saskatchewan, we'll be there for Manitoba, we'll be there for all of Canada.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Knocking on doors, I met Foothills families who are in tears because they're losing their jobs and they're losing their businesses because of the Liberal attacks on Canadian energy. These are small business owners who employ hundreds of thousands of Canadians right across this country. They need real action, no more political games. Like the provinces, they want to build because pipelines mean paychecks, mean a growing economy, and energy independence. So why are the Liberals the only holdout? The Prime Minister is meeting with premiers in Saskatchewan today. Will he approve a pipeline at that meeting?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is indeed meeting the 13 provincial and territorial leaders today with one clear goal: to support nation-building projects that bring Canadians together by ensuring that they are expedited but also efficiently reviewed. As the Prime Minister said, any project will need to get consensus from provinces, Indigenous communities and private partners, and will be subject to assessment. But Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has also been clear: it's time to build in Canada, and build is what we're going to do.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Well, the Prime Minister may be meeting, but he sure isn't listening. While he dawdles, the opportunities to unleash Canadian energy pass us by because of the Liberals' anti-energy legislation that blocks infrastructure and blocks investment. Like the provinces, they want to build. Canadian workers want to work. Canadians want energy independence, but C-69 blocks pipelines, 48 blocks shipping. The job-killing carbon tax, or the industrial carbon tax, is punishing our energy sector. Will the Prime Minister end his attacks on Canadian oil and gas and repeal his anti-energy legislation today?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we were served another reminder just this weekend of the threats that we face in terms of trade around the world. This government will fight, protect, and build. This Prime Minister is in Saskatoon today with 13 provincial and territorial leaders to build one Canadian economy, not 13. And yes, Mr. Speaker, we intend to build this country. We intend to build major national projects in this country, and we intend to put Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, and Canadian workers to work building the country that we live in.
The honourable member for Edmonton Northwest.
The Prime Minister is meeting with provinces in Saskatoon today. The consensus is clear as the call to build pipelines and energy infrastructure becomes louder and louder. The only one standing in the way is the federal Liberal government. Building energy projects means a stronger Canadian economy, less dependence on the United States, and powerful paychecks for Canadian workers. Will the Liberal government approve a pipeline at the meeting in Saskatchewan today?
Yeah. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has been very, very clear, and I don't know if my friends across the aisle have heard it quite clearly. Certainly Canadians heard it in the last federal election when they returned a Liberal government with a very, very clear mandate. That is to fight for this country, fight against trade threats from other places, protect the citizens of this country, protect, yes, our natural resources, protect our workers, but also, Mr. Speaker, to build this country, to build major national projects. That's what's on the agenda today in Saskatoon, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Edmonton Northwest.
Mr. Speaker, we hear a lot of rhetoric from this Liberal government about making Canada an energy superpower, but their commitment to job-killing anti-Canadian energy legislation holds back our potential as a nation. The actions needed today are to repeal the No New Pipeline C-69, repeal the shipping ban C-48, repeal the job-killing oil and gas production cap, repeal the industrial carbon tax. So will this Liberal government take action today, the action needed to repeal their anti-energy agenda?
Excellent.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how we can be much more clear. The Prime Minister convened the 13 provincial and territorial leaders today with the express purpose of discussing with them the kind of major national nation-building projects that this country can consider undertaking. That is what is going on in Saskatoon. I don't know if the members across actually follow the news or followed the election campaign, but what happened is we said it's time to build, Mr. Speaker, and build is what we're going to do.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member from Montmorency Charlevoix. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister is meeting the provinces in Saskatchewan today, and we're hearing a clear consensus. We're hearing calls to build pipelines and energy infrastructure. There are more and more of these calls. Quebecers want pipelines, and the only obstacle in their way is the federal government. If we build energy projects, we'll be strengthening our Canadian economy, reducing our dependence on the U.S., and we'll be making sure that our Canadian workers can bring home good paychecks. So, will the Liberal government approve the building of a new Canadian pipeline today at the meeting? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is indeed in Saskatoon today. And what is being discussed there? Yes, energy. Yes, big national energy projects. Yes, the complete elimination of interprovincial trade barriers and make just one federal economy, or one pan-Canadian economy rather, in order to increase our GDP by 4% according to some economists. And so we will be making sure to create good jobs, investment in Quebec, elsewhere in Canada, and Mr. Speaker, we will be building Canada. That's what we're here to do. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, throughout the campaign, the Prime Minister said that he had a plan to build new energy projects. So what better time than today to present his plan to all of the Canadian premiers together and explain how he will be building that energy infrastructure. People in my riding in Quebec and in Canada are all sick and tired of paying more for less. Will the Liberal government spare a thought for our rural regions and abolish Bill C-69, the anti-energy bill? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, I know the member is new to this House. I don't know if he's following the news. But the Prime Minister is in Saskatoon, and he's working closely with all of the provinces and territories. And what are they talking about? Energy projects, as well as others, that will make Canada an economic superpower on the global stage. Our mandate is to build Canada strong. That is the mandate we got through the election campaign. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, the very first call I received from a Calgarian was from a small business owner being extorted by criminals for $300,000. Extortions in Calgary, Brampton, and Edmonton are on the rise and only getting worse. Under these Liberal extortion cases are up 357%. Liberals voted down Conservative Bill C-381 to tackle extortion. The bill sets mandatory minimum penalties for extortion after Liberals took away penalties in their soft-on-crime bill C-5. Will the Prime Minister work with Conservatives to adopt Bill C-381 to crack down on violent extortions?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, extortion is a serious crime and we're taking it seriously. Extortion carries a penalty of life in prison in Canada, Mr. Speaker. That is extremely serious. If committed with a firearm, there's minimum sentences as well. We'll act decisively to strengthen the criminal code and move aggressively to protect victims by making bail laws stricter as well, Mr. Speaker, for violent organized criminals. And we'll work closely with the RCMP and local police across the country. We created a task force. There's more work to do. We're investigating these serious issues, and I hope the criminal...
The honourable member for Fort McMurray.
Failed Liberal drug policies flooding the streets with dangerous drugs, causing crime and chaos in our street, are making the addiction crisis worse. Every day, 22 Canadians die from drug overdose. During the last Liberal decade, we've seen more people die from addiction than we lost in the Second World War. We've heard heartbreaking stories of young people becoming addicted to drugs labeled as safe, only to later lose their life to addiction. Conservatives want to see investment in treatment and recovery. Simple question: will the Prime Minister reverse course and put an end to the deadly, unsafe supply program today?
L'honorable ministre de la Santé.
Merci, Monsieur. The Honourable Minister of Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. Well, Mr. Speaker, as you know, this situation affects Canadians, and my department and I are closely considering the question, and we will be looking for solutions. Thank you.
Member for Fort McMurray.
Fentanyl is 100 times more potent than heroin, and as little as 2 milligrams can kill a person. Through the last Liberal decade, Canada has become a fentanyl manufacturing hub, with Breaking Bad-style super labs popping up across the country. Mass fentanyl production is mass murder. But Liberal laws let these monsters who traffic the deadly drugs walk free. Conservatives are proposing mandatory life sentences to those involved with trafficking, production, distribution of more than 40 milligrams of fentanyl. Will the Prime Minister take real action and give life sentences to the drug kingpins committing mass murder?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, fentanyl has impacted every single community in North America, and I know that we see the impacts of fentanyl and its use have killed so many young people. That's why we listed 7 cartels as terrorist entities under the criminal code. I'm working closely with Kevin Brasseau, Canada's fentanyl czar, at home and abroad, to put a laser-sharp focus on dismantling fentanyl rings. We will put those who profit from this drug behind bars, Mr. Speaker. We will always be there to protect Canadians.
Honorable Deputy.
The Honourable Member for Madawaska-Restigouche. Mr. Speaker, Francophone immigration plays an essential role in strengthening minority Francophone communities throughout the country. It's also important for supporting economic growth, and that's why I'm proud to say that we have set ambitious goals for the years to come: 8.5% for 2025, 9.5% for 2026, and 10% for 2027. Can the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship tell us about what the government is doing to support Francophone immigration? Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague for his question and his hard work on Francophone immigration. Last year, we exceeded our Francophone immigration target for Francophone immigration outside Quebec, and we are determined to support the strength and long-term growth of Francophone communities outside Quebec. That's why our new government will establish a 12% objective for Francophone immigration outside Quebec by 2029. Thank you.
Excellent. Member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just handed the keys to his government to Marc-Andre Blanchard, Trudeau's UN ambassador and now his chief of staff. This is the guy who wants to invest in killing oil and gas and do it.
Would the member like to rewind a bit and to... Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just handed the keys to the government to Mr. Blanchard, Trudeau's UN ambassador, now his chief of staff. This is the guy who wants to invest in killing in oil and gas. Where are the claps? And do it through Brookfield. Right. Who else worked at Brookfield? Anyone? Well, there was the Prime Minister himself. Why is the Prime Minister surrounding his government with Trudeau loyalists who want to shut down Canada's energy sector? And is that why he still refuses to publicly disclose his Brookfield assets?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, we welcome the appointment of a new Chief of Staff in the Office of the Prime Minister. Mr. Blanchard is a great public servant, a great Canadian who has had a stellar career in the private and the public sectors, and we welcome back to public service. And as for the Prime Minister, he follows, as all members must, the most stringent code of ethics for elected members in the world, and the Prime Minister will obviously continue to comply with all of the rules.
Hear, hear. Honourable Member for Brantford, Brent South, Six Nations.
Not just the energy sector under threat, it's public safety too. While the Prime Minister's new Chief of Staff is hell-bent on shutting down oil and gas, he's also brought back David Lametti as Principal Secretary, the same failed Justice Minister.
The member can start from the top on that.
Lacking incompetence, the same minister that they fired. This is the same minister who gutted bail and pushed soft on crime bills like Bill C-5 and C-75 that they all voted for. And laws that helped unleash chaos on our streets, drive violent crime up 50%. Is the Prime Minister really doubling down on the same Trudeau insiders who always put criminals over that of community safety?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
There seems to be a very odd fixation on the personnel decisions in the Prime Minister's office. The obvious accountability is done in this House, as the member well knows, and he can ask any question that he wants to any minister of this House without impugning people that aren't here. But Mr. Lametti, for his part, a great former parliamentarian, a great Italian Canadian, a distinguished person who is entering public service. These people should be celebrating that great Canadians are prepared to step up and enroll for public service and serve Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Signal Hill.
The Prime Minister yesterday announced his new Chief of Staff and Principal Secretary. These are two of the top officials, some of the most powerful people in Ottawa, directing policy. The new Chief of Staff wants to kill oil and gas and says it needs to be done through Brookfield. David Lametti was Trudeau's Justice Minister, oversaw our broken bail system, and kept C-5 and C-75 laws on the books. Why is the Prime Minister surrounding himself with Trudeau officials that want to keep oil and gas in the ground and keep soft on crime laws on the books?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I do not understand this odd fixation with personnel decisions. What we have in this House is a number of public servants who are quite willing to answer questions about the public policies of this government and to be held accountable for those. We obviously celebrate when distinguished, capable and talented people join the Government of Canada. That is certainly the case, as we heard over the weekend, but I suggest that members move on to asking about the issues that Canadians are concerned about.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Confederation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the face of repeated threats by the United States to our economic sovereignty, Canadians chose to give our government a strong mandate to build a strong Canada. Now, as we've heard, today the Prime Minister and Premiers are meeting in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, one of the economic engines of this great country, and strengthening Canada's economy is on the agenda. Now, members opposite have imagined a lot of outcomes from a meeting they weren't invited to. But in an effort to get back to facts, can the Minister of Finance and National Revenue inform the House on details of this work and its importance to Canada?
The L'honorable ministre des Finances et du Revenu national.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague from Calgary Confederation and welcome him to this House and thank him for the excellent work he's doing for people of Calgary, but also of Alberta, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, the First Minister's meeting is happening today in Saskatoon is an important opportunity for the Prime Minister to bring the premiers together around the table with one common agenda, Mr. Speaker, focusing on building a stronger and united Canada. It's time to build one Canadian economy, accelerate the approval of nation-building projects. Mr. Speaker, together we're going to build Canada strong. That's what we're doing.
The honourable member for Barrie South, Innisfil.
For 7 months, parliamentary committees have sat idle while, according to the Prime Minister, the country is facing an existential threat, and it appears that he's in no rush to have them constituted. Committees are an important function of our democracy. Committees are where bills are scrutinized, where witnesses tell MPs about the impacts these bills and threats are having on their businesses, their lives, and their communities, where the government is held to account. We don't have a budget, and without committees, there will be no oversight or accountability. Maybe that's what the Prime Minister wants. Will the Prime Minister commit to ensuring committees are in place before his summer vacation starts?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I've taken careful note, and of course, standing committees will be constituted in this House, as they always are. But I wonder where that member was last fall when this party spent 3 straight months refusing to hear one single government proposal with respect to improving the lives of Canadians, with respect to improving our environment, with respect to moving forward on other projects. Where was that member? He should be ashamed of asking that question right now.
The honourable member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, for 20 months, the Netanyahu regime has been mercilessly bombing Palestinians in Gaza. 54,000 are dead, including 15,000 children. Hundreds of thousands of people have been wounded. Hunger used as a weapon of war. Hospitals have been bombed. Families have burned alive. Once humanity said never again, but today it's happening again under our very eyes. The Prime Minister stood with France and the UK to say that if this didn't stop, he would not remain idle. On behalf of all of the children that have been murdered and mutilated in Gaza, will the Liberals prepare sanctions against Netanyahu and his cabinet?
The Honourable Secretary of State for International Development.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is deeply concerned by the renewed escalation in Gaza. These attacks put the lives of countless civilians in danger. We urge both parties to remain committed to ceasefires, save the preventable loss of countless lives. Essentials, foods, electricity, fuel, and medical supplies must never be used as political tools. We call for the immediate and unimpeded flow into the Strip and for the release of all remaining hostages. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And that does it for today's question period. Give members a couple of seconds to